ready. Welcome to what's up, guys? Welcome to episode 103 of Convos on the Pedicab. I'm here with comedian Gina Hyena.
Hey.
She
is sweating.
Yeah, it's pretty hot out. You know, she made it a little awkward. We're sitting in two cabs.
Yeah, I like my personal space.
She must think I have monkeypox or something like that. She was going to be a doctor, so I'm listening to I'm following the science. I'm listening to the medical experts. So I'm happy to have you.
Thank you.
Way to make it awkward.
Why did I make it awkward? I just like personal space.
Whatever, that's fine. That's cool. I don't care.
It seems like it. I hope this is like a running throughout the whole hour. We just talk about how we're in separate pedicabs.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like back to the COVID days. I used to do this during COVID when people were actually worried about the virus.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, you know, they got the new variant. Bill Gates dropped a new virus, so I understand where you're coming from.
Oh no, I just literally just like personal space.
No, I get it. I understand.
I'm like that's just it.
I've seen your act. I could tell you love personal space.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, you're gonna be a doctor. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I want to start with that.
I was going to school for genetic counseling, so I was going to go. So because a lot of people are waiting to have kids, and we've started to discover genetic disorders ever since the human genome was mapped out. There's now a specialty, so doctors only get like one semester of a genetics course. You only do like, you know, a total of 4 credits of it. Okay. So now you have specialists because it's so in depth ever since like CRISPR and all this other shit came out that there's like over 6,000 genetic disorders. So if 2 people were going to have a kid and you were worried about like Huntington's disease or they're just older, you would get your genes tested and then you would sit down with me and I would explain to you the results of it and like what those meant. So like something like an interesting one always for me was people with achondroplasia or like dwarfism. Always, if there's 2 people with achondroplasia that are going to have a kid, they always get tested because it's going to be 50% that they're going to have achondroplasia in that child. 25% it's going to be a, you know, average sized human, or 25% the fetus is going to die. Okay. So they would come to me. I would explain to them, you know, these are the embryos you have. These are the ones that are vital. And then what's an interesting like conversation is that sometimes those people would choose the fetus that has achondroplasia.
Why would you choose that?
Well, because it's like their own community, and like they're like, well, it's something that they, you know, typically they live in communities of people with dwarfism, so it's like it's literally their kid. So the whole reason I liked this course and like talking about it, and because my standpoint always was like, it's their fucking life. Like if they're happy enough to have the kid, they went through all this trouble to like get their genes tested. As long as they're gonna take care of that kid, I'm like, you do you.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of people in that course that were like, how could they do that? Like, how? I'm like, you're not raising that kid for 18 years, so what do you give a fuck?
Yeah, I mean, it's your choice. Like, that's your community. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I think CRISPR and a lot of that's like a lot of genetic modification. Mm-hmm. I call it like disruptive innovation.
Yeah.
Do you ever follow like Kathy Wood? Do you know who she is?
I haven't. No.
She's a hedge fund manager with ARK Investments.
Okay.
And they like invest a lot of money into like disruptive innovation. Mm-hmm. Like there's an ETF called like ARK-G, which is ARK genomic stuff. Yep. And it's like CRISPR, like Editas Medicine, like all of those. It's just a bunch of companies like that.
Got you.
And those companies like during the pandemic skyrocketed to like insane levels.
Bet.
But now it's like it's pretty much like lost almost all of its valuation.
Oh, really?
But I do I think it's because of money printing, because of everyone was speculating on stocks. Everybody was envisioning a lot of stuff. So people like kind of, I think markets react to what they think the future is going to be versus like what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that played a role. But I do think that like genomic engineering is probably going to be the future of humanity.
It's interesting because it's like, it's one of those things that we're still studying that if you change something, so if you know that like, so you know that there's like a gene that say you're going to have Alzheimer's later on.
Yeah.
You're like, if you turn that off, the interesting thing right now is like, we don't know along the way. You're like, okay, at the end, like, you know, you're like turning off something that could turn on Alzheimer's, but all in between, that's what the whole study of like epigenetics is like, if you turn this off, well, what happens? Like, what else did that gene do if you're like 30 years old? Like, does that control an enzyme? Like, we don't know what else it controls because we're only looking for certain things. So it's such an interesting field because you're like, I don't know what we're fucking with yet.
Have you heard of the term designer baby?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Which I think is so interesting because you can like look at certain things that you're like, oh, if you want either male or female, I think it's the male sperm is heavier. That was like the early on days where you could weigh out the semen and you could put it in a centrifuge and you would know that like there's certain ones because I think either the Y chromosome might be heavier molecularly or the X. So either way, they have a different molecular weight. So you could choose if you wanted male or female, but now it's like going into, do you want more blonde hair? Do you want more blue eyes?
You can get to a point where you start hand-picking genes.
Yeah, isn't that wild? You can
say, like, I want my kid to be 7 feet tall and 350 pounds and create, like, an actual, like, Viking.
Yeah, and I think it's going to get to a point where what's going to spread the difference of people that have a lot of money and people that don't. Like, I think a long way down the road, if we keep doing this, there's going to be people that can choose for like healthier like genes, or can choose for like taller, like more better aesthetic procedures that are like, you know, more in the culture.
That's going to keep the power structure intact forever, right?
Yeah,
so, like,
absolutely.
Back in the day, the royal families used to breed with each other.
Yep. Which you're like, oh, you were doing it wrong.
Well, yeah, because they thought that was like, oh, it's royal blood.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep things the way they are. And then what happened was that they literally ruined their gene pool because they just created a bunch of literally created a bunch of sick retards. And then the people ruling were like, you had people that were like, you had like Forrest Gump pretty much like running countries and running empires.
Crazy, right?
And it's just absolutely insane. It's like you picture Joe, but you look at Joe Biden right now, right? You're like, clearly this guy has dementia, right?
Yeah,
like, clearly
it's sad,
this guy
actually.
is not with it and not fit to run a country.
I think it's very sad, yeah.
But like, if you put this in perspective, like about 100 years ago, 150 years ago, you had entire kingdoms of kings and emperors that were like, that have been inbred for centuries.
Can you think of one that like a good example
100 times worse than Joe Biden?
But can you think of like an example? Because it's like I can picture that, but like I've never seen like a picture of a king who has.
Well, that was in Russia. There was Catherine the Great.
Okay.
So she had a husband named Peter or something like that, and he was like retarded. Like he like played with like little toy trains all day, and he was like the emperor of Russia. And I'm like, oh, and she like killed him. She like poisoned him and killed him and took the throne. But like you had shit like that you had stuff like that happen all the time throughout history.
Yeah, because there's always like when they talk about like the historical figures, and especially over in like England, all that, there's always like a weird cousin that has like a thing, or like even in like movies, it's always represented. There's like, oh, cousin whoever, and they're like,
even Queen Elizabeth, I think, married a cousin.
It is crazy that's what they were like. Oh, keep it in the family, and you're like, oh wow, you just really fucked over your whole family by doing that.
Well, if you look at what these people look like, they don't look healthy.
No, even like the princes over there. Who is it? Prince William, that's trying to be like a fucking TV star now.
Harry. No, Harry looks fine though. Harry looks fine.
Yeah, Harry's cute. Harry's the redhead, right? That was like the bad boy one.
Harry
but who's
fine.
the other one that
William.
married? Yeah,
Kate.
He looks. Yeah, William looks horrible now. Yeah, but he's got like the big head and all that, and you're like, damn. Boy, like, thank God you got married early, because, like, he went to shit.
Well, it wouldn't matter. You're literally you're, like, third in line to be the king of England.
Yeah.
You can get any girl you want. That doesn't matter at that point.
But didn't they, like, leave? Aren't they, like, exiled from that whole thing?
No, that's Harry. Harry and Meghan are exiled.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that whole thing is just, ugh.
But who cares? At that point, who cares? Like, you still have, like, enough money to be set for generations. Like, why does it matter?
Yeah. It kind of, like, talks or speaks to like our culture of like putting like movie stars up on like these pedestals because they have so much influence over the people that don't think for themselves, that you're like, oh, you literally left a kingdom to come to America and like live in LA and want to be on Netflix because you probably would have like some sort of make more money or have some more influence over people because people fall for that.
You're not gonna have more influence being on Netflix than being the king of England.
You think so?
Fuck no. Absolutely not. Not at that point. Even though like the monarchy has no power, you're still like the king of England. Like you're still gonna have way more money. Being in Buckingham Palace, you have an unlimited supply of resources pretty much when you're the king of a country.
What can they do over there? I know nothing about like their political system.
Nothing. The king is a figurehead.
Yeah.
But you're still the king.
Gotcha.
You still live in that palace. You still have insane amounts of money. You still have like insane amounts of charities, insane amounts of trust, insane amounts of stuff that you just have almost all control over. It's actually a very easy job at this point right now to be the king because like you just have a ton of money. You're a figurehead and you're just chilling in a palace all day.
Yeah.
Going to social events, kind of in charge of charities.
Yeah, because it's funny because I just think about
you,
as
mess
like
with some little kids here and there, you know what I mean? Like, then you just
every once in a while they toss you a little kid to play around with.
Yeah, then you just mess with some little kids.
So gross.
Drink some adrenochrome, like whatever. Don't worry about it, you know. Prince Andrew, like, come on.
It is insane that like it's like there obviously is a level of like people that are friends that are like just doing some horrific shit that like when I think about here I'm like we really don't have any idea what's going on. Like we have no Like, I wish I could watch, like, from the outside, like, what's actually going on here.
Well, listen, like, Jeffrey Epstein's friends and Ghislaine Maxwell's clients, they want you to wear a mask and get vaccinated. So, like, why wouldn't you want to listen to these people?
I just want to know what the end game is.
We were talking about this earlier. What do you think the end game is?
I don't know. I will say, like, with everything with I think that was almost like a push of like, well, how much will you listen to us when we don't have, like, how Pfizer dropped the papers and they're like, it was 12% effective, but like no one talks about that.
There's all these other side effects. Well, that's because like something always happens, like a mass shooting happens to occur when that shit goes down.
Yeah, it's like the same day
like,
that the Pfizer papers.
We're gonna ban abortion. We're gonna do a mass shooting. Some shit'll just happen.
Yeah,
to get
and I'm like,
the peasants to talk about something else.
It's very interesting because I'm like, okay, so you got, like, you're releasing documents now saying that, like, it's not this as effective as we said it was, like, where we publicly said it was this effective, and it's straight up, here's the paper saying that it's not.
Yeah, and no there's one also a bunch of side effects that can happen from this. And you're going to be a doctor, so, like, you're a trusted expert on this.
Yeah, with all the mRNA stuff. Yeah, it's, for me, I was just like,
Gina, question.
I'm not going to answer it, probably.
All right. Did you get the shot?
I'm not going to answer that.
All right. Fair. Fair. All right. Fair. You're not answering it. Fair.
Yeah. No. With all the.
Well, I'm wearing a shirt that shows that I identify as someone
trans vaccinated. No, I will say it's when all that stuff came out, like, just for me, I'm like, it's under an emergency use authorization. This is what I told people. I was like, maybe be wary of that, because from working in I've worked in pharmaceuticals for over 10 years, and I'm like, well, from working in that, I'm like, that means that it's not, the studies haven't been that far out yet. Even when we get something that's had like 3 FDA studies approved, still what you're doing after that is called post-marketing research. So you're like taking a drug that's been approved already by like 3 FDA trials. Like, it's not easy to get something passed by the FDA, but you're still in post-marketing research. So that's why, like, a lot of things like Ambien got approved, but then we didn't know until like a year later that it fucks with women super hard. Like, the side effects of like going shopping online or like just doing crazy shit at night, like cooking and all that stuff, they didn't see that in the studies. They didn't have enough numbers of people. And like, then we found out later that the dosage should be adjusted for women over men because they tend to get more side effects from it. But that was all found out post-marketing. So it was just like, all this stuff happened. So I'm like, when something new comes out, I'm always like very wary of it. And so that's
absolutely.
That's why I had just told friends, I was like, well, I've worked in this field for like 10 years. So maybe like just be wary of like what you're getting yourself into.
And like we talked about earlier, you got to be careful about who's telling you what to do. Mm-hmm. Like if Jeffrey Epstein's friends all want you to wear that mask and get that vaccine, I mean, yeah, he may be the greatest philanthropist of all time, but maybe you should take a step back and wait to see how it works on everybody else. And what the implications of getting that shot are going to be and how they're going to enforce whether or not you got the shot and XYZ, right?
Yeah,
that's my take.
It was just interesting, too, because it was like, okay, this is the first mRNA vaccine. And I'm like, being interested in genetics, I'm like, okay, so you're changing the messenger RNA to tell RNA to make something different or to make a protein. And so I was like, well, that's like the first time. So I was kind of like, all right, I'd be very wary of this because we haven't injected ourselves with foreign mRNA before. And
like, what could that do to you?
So typically, I mean, further down the road, you just wouldn't know because it's like, it's literally, instead of making, injecting yourself with a dead virus, which forces you to make antibodies, it was literally injecting, like, you have messenger RNA, which tells RNA to synthesize a protein. So it was hijacking, like, it was pretty much like injecting code. So if you think of yourself as a computer, it was like overrunning a system of making a protein that like your body has never seen before. So it was making the spike protein. That's what we were reacting to. So instead of deadened virus, now you're just having a reaction to the spike protein, which you're making in your blood. So I was like,
but what is a spike protein?
So it's when you look at like the emoji of like a virus, the things that are sticking off are the spike proteins. So sometimes it's just called an S protein. So that thing that actually lets the virus, like when you think of like the emoji with all the spikes coming off of it, so it kind of looks like a sea urchin, the little spikes are the protein. And then it lets it inject, like, so it kind of pierces the cell wall of one of your cells, and then it lets it like let out all of its DNA to hijack your cell to make the virus cell instead of your own cells.
So couldn't that also cause the virus to mutate into something worse?
Well, so when you're thinking of like having a response to so the whole thing with like being like, okay, well now the virus can mutate faster, so they found when they make a lot of vaccines, it actually tends to make the virus mutate faster unless you have 100% efficacy. So even if you have like 70% efficacy, well, now it's kind of like when you think about taking antibiotics and you don't take all of it and then you leave like a little bit of that bacteria behind. It's like, oh, so this is what's going on. So like we're going to learn to fight that. So it's similar to what's happening. Unless you have like 100% efficacy, you're actually going to push that virus to mutate faster.
Right. Like the measles vaccine has like 100% efficacy pretty much.
Yeah. So you're not worried about like measles.
No, and that's why like you could even, at this point, you could even not vaccinate for measles and be fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, probably not necessarily. Like you'll still might start getting some localized outbreaks. But for the most part, it's like the risk that you're taking, maybe I'm wrong, right? And I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong, but like there's and I'm just asking you because you're someone who could have been a doctor, right?
If I had much more money.
Well, yeah, but like if I chose, like when me and my girlfriend were to have a kid, right? If I say, hey, I don't want to give my son or daughter the MMR shot, right? The chances, because so many people have already gotten that vaccine. So
you're like relying on like herd immunity.
Yeah, because we've already developed herd immunity. And because we also have so many more advancements in therapeutics and in medicine and in personal hygiene that I'm not really risking. I'm pretty much I feel like I'm taking a pretty low risk to not give my son or daughter that shot because it's already all but been eradicated.
Gotcha. I think it would just a matter of like where
sense.
You live. It makes sense.
Living in Austin, Texas right now. Or living in like Central Texas.
I got you. Yeah, I would think as long as you didn't live in a community where everybody was doing that, because then it's just like, who knows, like somebody could like, have a kid that like for some reason contracted it from God knows where, and then all the kids would like, say you're like one of those weird, like how Owen Benjamin has that community of people. Do you know about this?
No, tell me. But that's a kind of a weird guy though.
Psycho. He like tried to start this group called the Bearitaria, which like he has people call themselves bears, which is just fucking weird because I'm like, I don't think.
Well, he also like wants to blame the Jews and blame people like me for all our problems, and I'm like, yeah, it's a little weird, bro. I'm not really feeling that. Like, you went a little too far. A little too far.
Honestly,
too far.
It kind of seems like he has a mental health problem, like, and it almost seems like sad because he seems like manic at times.
Well, he also like blew his whole career.
Yeah, and then like it's instead of being like sorry or like getting help, he's just angry and spiteful at people, and like
I'd be angry and spiteful. I would feel that way if I blew my whole career too.
He attacks Joe Rogan on a daily basis and blames him for like the loss of his career because at one point he went on the Joe Rogan podcast and Joe was like, hey man, like maybe like think about the way you're expressing yourself online. Like maybe just like be careful because I know you're a smart guy. And like every day if you like find Owen Benjamin makes like different Instagrams, like because he always gets like booted off. Because he says shit about Jewish people and he like says all this horrific shit and then he's like, oh, nobody wants me on a media platform, and you're like, well, just stop like being super hateful and like calling for violence.
But there also is problems with like a lot of people are just getting thrown off of media platforms for any reason whatsoever. So and like, that's not good. That's not good either. Like,
no,
like I don't think you should be throwing
censorship, right?
You don't want to throw someone like that off of a media platform because I think we're smart enough to just choose to tune that out.
Yeah. So when he does make an Instagram account, it's mostly like, I can't believe this guy was trying to gatekeep me. And he like and it's just like, no, I don't think that's what happened. It seemed like a friend was like trying to reach out to you and like help you out.
People have some mental stuff.
Yeah. So he's trying to start like a cult pretty much called like, and he makes everybody call themselves like bear or whatever. So you'd be like Pedicab bear and like whatever. Like it's just, I'd be like Gina bear. Like it's very strange.
That's weird.
Yeah. And they all do like homesteading and like he's promising to build them this community called Bearitaria and like asks for donations, but he hasn't made it yet.
Oh.
And then he's like, wait, no, it's a state of mind. Like it seems like he's just like grifting people. But I'm like, oh, if you lived in a community like that and it was like all people who like didn't vaccinate for everything and you're like, well, if it's all them, it's like. But if you're stuck in
that community, who cares? You're stuck. You're not going.
Yeah,
it's not like you're going to a third world country where that shit is still semi-prevalent.
Yeah, for me, I'm like, I just honestly don't know where you first pick up measles, to be honest with you. Like, I'm like, I don't know where the fuck it comes from.
My dad never got any vaccines for anything. My grandmother was a big anti-vax. But my dad was also born in the 1950s.
Yeah.
It was a little different.
Yeah.
And they had the Cutter incidences with polio. So my dad never got a polio shot. My dad never got anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he was just all...
Well, he got the measles.
Oh, did he really?
Oh, yeah, he got the measles. Of course he got that. Yeah, he got the measles.
Yeah, I don't know where it's contracted from.
But like back then, everybody got the measles, and it wasn't a big deal. It was like getting the chicken pox. Like people used to have like sleepovers where everyone would just get the measles, and you all hung out for a week, and you watched movies, and you're like, well, I got the measles, I'm gonna just hang out for a week.
Oh, really? It's not like I thought it like can kill kids.
I mean, it can, like soaking chicken pox, soaking the cold, soaking the flu. A lot of stuff can, but like most people who get like 90+%, I think, of people who got the measles, probably even higher than that, right?
Probably, I would guess.
Are fine.
Really?
Yeah, everyone used to get the measles. My mom in Russia got the mumps. Like nothing.
Your mom was in Russia?
Yeah, she grew up in like Russia and Ukraine.
Oh shit.
Yeah, she got the mumps. Like,
where is she now?
In America. Like she like moved here in the 1970s, right?
Fuck.
But like she never got a bunch. I don't think she got like any vaccines because you're living in the communist shithole. So
what does she think about everything that's like going on with like everything?
Well, my mom and I and my dad and I are pretty much on opposite sides of the whole spectrum on this.
Really?
Yeah, like my mom got her booster shot and did all this stuff and is like mad at me that not anymore, but like I bought a house, right, in like Johnson City, and I needed a cosigner because with pedicabbing it's like you gotta just through everything, right? Like I needed a cosigner. And my mom and dad were gonna cosign, but then my dad was trying to walk back cosigning because I didn't get the vaccine, and he's like, well, I don't know that I feel comfortable co-signing unless you get the vaccine because I don't know what's going to happen to you if you die. Like thinking about like really believing that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to do that, and if you don't want to co-sign, that's fine. And we had a whole big discussion.
Is he from Russia as well?
No, my dad's from here.
Oh, okay.
Right. And I'm like, well, when me and Vanessa have kids, I guess you don't have to be involved with your grandkids. I mean, that's fine too,
Oof.
That's cool. Like,
damn.
I'm not mad at you, but this is how it's gonna be. Like, if you're not gonna do that, I'll figure it out. But you really willing to do that? Like, you're really willing to do that over this shot that hasn't been proven? Like, that's ridiculous. And eventually, they were like, okay, why don't we just become the bank if anything happens? This way, at least we will still own it.
Got you.
And I'm like, okay, it worked out, right? And it's cool. But like, it almost like ruined our family dynamic.
Yeah, it is
like,
sad to see all the things dynamic, that like situation.
I'm glad it didn't. I'm really happy.
Yeah, I'll bet. Like, because that is like that would have been horrible. And it is. There's like a lot of stories like that where like families were torn apart by this like political issue, and you're like for me at the end of the day, I'm like, all right. At the end of the day, everybody wants their family to be safe. They want to feel like some sort of like have shelter, like have the people they care about be safe. But it's just like I feel like a lot of this division is based on fear, and there's a lot of just like fear porn all the fucking time.
On both sides. On
both sides, for sure.
I think it's a little more on like the liberal like MSM type things. Because if it wasn't for that type of fear-mongering, we never would have had lockdowns. We never would have had mandates.
Yeah.
We never would have had a full-blown race riots like we had in 2020.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, pushing, and it was just like, okay, yes, if I was, say they were burning down or shooting Italian people. Yes, if somebody shot my fucking kid when he got pulled over for a ticket, I would probably want to burn down police, but it doesn't get anything done.
No, I understand that, but here's the other thing too, right? And if you actually look at the statistics, that type of stuff happens like on a much rarer basis than what the media says.
Yeah.
And you used different types of algorithms, and you use a lot of algorithmic stuff to point out something to create a narrative, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, you look at what happened with George Floyd, it was horrible, right?
Awful.
But, like, there's a reason why stuff like that was conveniently getting spread like wildfire in the middle of a pandemic during an election year, and it was being like this was being like
for sure.
You had a lot of super wealthy people in tech and in pharma and in banking that took something that's been happening and weaponized it during a specific time period to create a reaction to get what we're getting right now.
Yeah.
So.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. Like, all right, it's bad what's happening, what happened with George Floyd, what happened with a bunch of other stuff, right? Like, it's not good, right?
Nope.
No one could argue with that. But, like, if you look at, like, homicide, if you look at the homicide rates and the rates of, like, black people getting murdered, they're, like, infinitely more likely to get killed by other black people.
Really?
Yeah. Than they are to get killed by, like, a white person or to get killed by a police officer.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, the fear mongering, and it's just like the best way. And I remember a friend who went to prison told me this is what they tell you in anger management, is that anger is a secondary emotion. Usually it's like to hide like fear or to hide sadness. It's easier to be angry than it is to be sad or to be fearful. And so it's like I can see how these people, like, I feel like everyone's emotions are just getting hijacked, and it's like really sick to watch. Like, it's sick to watch. Like, what happened to your parents was probably like, you know, your mom came from a different country, so she loves this country and the opportunities it gave her. And so there's like a certain generation that are like, oh, well, why would they lie to me on the news? And it's just like, things are a little bit different.
Well, I think my mom should understand that living in a communist country, you should understand exactly why they lie to you on the news.
Yeah.
It is kind of weird that my mom doesn't really see the parallels.
No, right?
It's kind of strange.
Yeah.
My dad, I understand, right? But...
Yeah, it's interesting because I have an acupuncturist that's from North Korea when I'm back in New York. And she was like, none of this is good. She was like, I can tell you from being in Korea, like, it's not good if blindly people follow everything. They're like all this stuff, like people are just arguing.
I don't think people are blindly following what's in the news anymore, though. I think generally speaking, like the distrust in these networks has reached insane levels. Like,
I think they pushed it. Right?
Yeah, like they pushed it
too.
They did it too much, right? So now like CNN is like CNN is like negative. Like CNN Plus died after a month.
Yep.
The ratings for like corporate news and for corporate news outlets is at an all-time low. Like corporate journalists are almost like tobacco executives.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. It's interesting, but it's still like to see like my parents' generation, like they still always have like NBC on. They still watch like the Colbert Report and like take like everything as like it's fact.
Like the January 6th garbage, like
it's so wild. All of it. It's crazy to see on both ends. And I remember like the first time I really like woke up to this shit, to seeing how like it's played upon on both ends, was one of my friends back, and this was fucking 2013. His first job was to work for a marketing company. And his job was to be a fake protester. So the first thing they did, and this was like way back in the day, and I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, way back in the day, there was a guy that wrote a book about how the sun-made raisins, like all of their irrigation, because they were using so many chemicals, they could literally trace all the irrigation was causing these crazy cancers all along California. Like, it was like you could see like the irrigation, and you're like, this is coming from the chemicals from sun-made raisins. And he was this professor. He wrote a book about it. He was on a book tour. My friend's job was they were to crush this book. They were hired by Sun-Made Raisins. So every time this guy was on tour, they were dressed like they were college kids, being like, this guy's a fucking liar. Like, this guy's like anti-environment. Like, Sun-Made Raisins is like good for the environment. They literally planted young girls like to be in bars where this guy would be at, to make him seem like he was a womanizer, like take pictures. And I was like, that's fucking insane. Like, I was like, that is like one of the craziest fucking things I've ever heard. And I'm like, if that was happening back in 2013, it's like, I watched some of these protests and I'm like, how many of these people are fucking hired? Because some of it is so inflammatory that I'm like, you're just trying to make people react. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like pedicabbing here and there and like hanging out while the BLM protests were happening. And some of these protesters, like, I kind of, I guess, made friends. I didn't really make friends, but I kind of like, you know, was cool with them and stuff, right?
Yep.
And one of them told me, like, I was like, hey, where's Chris? And I was like, oh, yeah, Chris is getting paid to protest somewhere.
Isn't that wild?
I'm like, oh. Well, people definitely get paid to protest. Like, George Soros gave $200 million. And this is on his financial statements, right? Like, that he gave like $200 million to BLM and BLM-related charities right after George Floyd.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay.
And you're like, for what?
What does that exactly mean? Like, why does a mega billionaire, right? With
why
tens,
are you involved
if not
in
hundreds
this?
of billions of dollars? Like, why are you so involved with social justice? Like, that's weird, right? Because if you make billions of dollars and you're literally hoarding wealth, which is what you're doing, and hey, if you become a billionaire on your own, yo, good for you, props, right?
Yep.
Congratulations, you won. But like, you obviously don't care about social justice.
No, it's like it seems like
you don't care about social justice.
It's very hard. Yeah, it's like you're not really upset about like a black kid getting shot in Chicago. Like, I don't even like try. Like, you haven't even thought of that person. Like
you have to be somewhat of a sociopath to have that kind of money.
Yeah.
So why do I trust a sociopath with social justice?
It's
That's
very
kind
strange.
of weird, right?
Yeah. It's very strange because it's very hard not to go down that rabbit hole to be like, because I remember I was living in Austin too, and I was right downtown when all those protests were happening, and I was like, one, not this many people fucking live in downtown Austin. Two, like, I remember hearing like some hippie kids like in a coffee shop being like, oh, I'm going to this protest, but I'm not going to the 4 p.m. one because that's the Soros one. And I was like, oh, so even these like weirdos know that some of this is fucking all like flash, smoke, and mirrors. And I'm like, for what? For just division? Because at the end of the day, it just seems like if you want to divide people, like you can easily make more money off of them.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's about destabilizing countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you destabilize countries and regions, it's a lot easier to reset things in your own image.
Absolutely.
Like if you're creating a situation where there's like a ton of unrest and you have economies that are about to tank because we have an unsustainable business model due to incessant money printing and devaluing of currencies, and only the people who are like super wealthy are benefiting from this because they get inside information, so they get to own stocks and they get to buy assets that will appreciate at a higher rate than the currency being printed. Eventually, you create insane amounts of civil unrest, and that civil unrest will topple what the power structure is, right? And then, like, once that power structure topples, the people who are at the top of the pyramid could lose their spot at the top of the pyramid. If I know that something like this is going to happen, because anybody with half a brain knows that that's going to happen eventually, I want to plan ahead.
Yeah, so right? What are you planning?
So what are you planning? Like, I want to, like, if I'm planning ahead for something like this, I want to be the one who engineers the collapse.
Ooh.
Right? Because if I engineer the collapse that's already inevitable, then I also engineer who's going to replace the existing ruler.
Okay.
Or who
would you want?
It doesn't matter who I want, because it could be anybody.
Are we speaking hypothetical?
We're speaking hypothetical.
Okay. I was like, oh, so you want to
you look at like Sri Lanka, right? Like Sri Lanka just collapsed, right? The president.
That was wild.
Okay. So Sri Lanka collapsed. I don't know too much about Sri Lanka, right?
I know they owed China a lot of money. They couldn't pay it back, and they were like really upset about.
And they had all these insane green policies, and people couldn't
their
grow
living
their own
conditions
food.
were fucking insane.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they got rid of that ruler.
Yep.
But who knows what? Like, would you be surprised if that new ruler was like
a piece
extremely
of shit?
Connected to like Klaus Schwab and
no,
the world?
Not at all.
No, not at all. Right. And so that's a clear example of hey, we engineered a collapse. Right? The people revolted, and then we just put our guy in.
That's why I was like, I'm very concerned that the Japanese prime minister, the fucking prime minister from the UK,
well, he was a former prime minister. And
the prime minister from... the one from Japan was former?
Yeah, he was. I think he was campaigning for something else, but he was not prime minister at the time.
Oh, okay. So he wasn't in power.
No, I don't think he was. No.
Gotcha. And then Sri Lanka. It's like all of this happening in a week.
And then in Armenia and a lot of other countries.
Yeah.
And then you have the Dutch farmer protests. You have a lot of stuff that's going on that the media is not really covering.
No.
Which one's
that you're like a lot of people are protesting. Canada, I didn't realize on Canada Day they all wear orange because of all the kids that have gone missing and fucking died. Do you know that was a thing? I was like, because I told my friend in Canada, I was like, Happy Canada Day. She was like, thanks. Our new thing is that we wear neon orange in memory of the fucking kids that died. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? She was like, literally a field trip of a school that I had, we had to cancel because they were trying to find kids' bodies at the place we were supposed to go.
That's insane.
And they were like, okay, I didn't hear about that. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but that's why this stuff is happening, right?
Yeah.
So you accelerate these collapses, and when you accelerate the collapse, you have a chance to put your own plan ahead.
Yeah.
And put your own guy in charge.
Chess.
Yeah, you put your own guy in charge to build back better, so to speak, and create a new system.
Which is like this whole World Economic Forum things. I'm like, scary.
It's very scary. Do you ever watch the meetings?
Yeah, they're terrifying.
Terrifying.
Well,
so here's the thing,
what?
Right?
Yeah, like you're saying that out loud.
I nerd out and watch these things. In my car, I'm like, I'm gonna watch this whole hour, and my girlfriend can't watch it. She won't watch it with me, right?
Yeah.
And I understand because it's really boring. And you have to sit through a lot of boredom.
And then somebody blurts
then you
something
see
that you're
2 sentences wait, what did you just say?
Yeah. They're like, the dollar won't matter anymore or some shit. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, we need a central bank digital. We need central bank. We should get a central bank digital currency. Although with that, they're kind of divided on it because they also have forums about like the use of Bitcoin and crypto and stuff like that. So I think with that stuff, they're divided. And you can tell they're divided, which is good. But they're like, oh, we're having food problems, we're having sustainability problems, we're having these issues. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, why are we having these issues? Like, you caused those issues through the policies you implemented throughout COVID. You ever saw Event 201?
No.
Watch Event 201. There was a event simulating a global pandemic in October of 2019. Okay. And
I have something saved that I was just trying to remember.
You need to watch it. You need to watch it. And it kind of like predicts everything that's happening to a T. They're predicting uprisings. They're predicting everything.
I think I have that number saved because I was like, I know I have some because I like to read. I nerd out on this shit. I like reading like declassified CIA documents.
Oh, fun.
Because it's just like, they're so interesting. I'm like, if you ever want to sound absolutely fucking insane, just start talking about the stuff that the CIA has already said that they've done. Like gateway theory. Have you ever read that?
No, what's that?
They literally say time travel's real.
What? Tell me that. Share that.
It's like, I literally need to like research more of it. I watch like a video on gateway theory like every night. It's so in depth because it started with like them realizing, I think it was back in the 30s or 40s, how to make a hologram. And they're like, okay, and it's such like a complicated procedure. But then what they did is they trained people. So like the energy that you put out, like they can measure, and like your brain power, like in amps. And so they started training people, and a way to do it, which try this before you go to bed. It's so hard. Is you try to remember your whole day from, like, say you're laying in bed. You try to remember, okay, what did I just do right before I went to bed? And you try to, like, literally picture it in your mind. You try to go through your whole entire day and to the point that you woke up. Because it trains your brain on, like, a different system to, like, start creating this, like, circular system that you can go back to. And it's fucking insane. So they've had people train on this. They've also had people do, there's binaural beats, and they can do Hemi-Sync. So Hemi-Sync is syncing up the two different hemispheres of your brain. So if you listen to one wattage on one side or 1 hertz on one side, one on the other, your brain will start to get the balance. So if you're like, oh, 500 here and 300 here, it's like the division of the average of that will be the hertz your brainwave is at. So they've trained people to start doing meditation with Hemi-Sync. And then they had people that were called farseers. So they would have them in a different, like, they would have them here. And then they would put something like a painting in that barn. And they would be like, okay, what's in the painting? And people that were trained very well could be like, it's a picture of grapes. And 80% of the time they were right. And so then they started using them to try to find where satellites were in different countries. And most of the time they were right. So they were like, okay, we can literally get people to go back to places that they were, or farsee into different, like, places in the fucking world,
because you're syncing
it's just like, it's literally like using your brain. Like, your brain has so much power, and like,
but how does that
actual
influence time travel?
So it's so like fucking difficult to understand, but I guess they can like go to a time that's like before them, like it's from when you started training to going backwards. So it's called like Stargate, or Stargate I think is based on it, but it's called Gateway Theory.
Do I like literally move my body to go in time, or does my mind go into time?
No, it's like your mind. It's like your aura, like your, which is strange that like people always, like when you say aura, people think like hippie people with crystals, but like it's actually like a medical term people use too. Like you'll put it in medical notes, like, because you know when somebody's sick or like someone's having a bad day, they show up and you're like, oh, they, like, you can literally feel that they're having an off day.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, like you can say like, oh, they're like their aura like is bad. Like that's,
it's off.
So
like,
you can train like the energy you're outputting.
So could I go back in time, like mentally go back in time and change something from the past through my mind, and then come back into the into the present?
Probably only from your point of existence, from like your first memory. But it might, like, I mean, I don't think it would change. It could, because they talk about like the different dimensions that you're living on, that you could literally like put yourself, like there's so many dimensions happening at once of like who you are and like different experiences that you've had that like you could change based on like what you're outputting, like your whole, like it's pretty much like the same thing is manifesting.
So I could go back and change a conversation that I had with somebody from 10 years ago.
It might just change the way you're feeling right now, you know? Like you could probably go back and change a conversation with your father or something and just feel mentally different. Like
but the conversation still happened.
Yeah. But like to who, you know? Because it's like, is he like always thinking about that, or it's based on your perception?
So the only way you can really travel back in time is you're traveling back in time from your own perspective. You didn't really actually literally travel back.
No, you didn't like physically put your being there. It's like your because what's the other thing they call it? Astral projection. So you can astrally project to different places.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
a CIA document. It was released in 1983, I believe.
You've heard about Operation Northwoods, right?
No, what's that one?
What? You don't know about that?
No, what's that one?
Well, that's when the U.S. Was going to bomb Florida.
Uh-huh.
And they were going to blame it on Cuba. Because Florida
I didn't know this one. Yep.
And JFK refused to do that, and then
and then his
died.
brain fell out.
You want to hear something crazy? I ran into somebody. I gave a pedicab ride to somebody who was a 32nd degree Mason like a week ago.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
That's so wild.
And so I was asking him questions, and I didn't have a camera, and I'm kind of sad that I didn't have a camera. But basically, I was like, "So, what do you have to do to get involved to become a Mason and do this?" And he's like, "Well, you go to a lodge, you do rituals and this and that." And I'm like, "Well, what kind of rituals? Like, do they happen to involve a little kid or something like that? You know?" And he's like, "No, God, no, we don't do any of that stuff." And and so he basically
just pigs.
No, well, he basically told me that it's you go to these temples, you have a community, you learn about the world around you, you pay your dues, and you just get involved for years and years, and you move up. And so pretty much anybody like to get to a 32nd degree Mason, as long as you're just consistent and you pay your dues.
Yeah, it's like with anything else.
You'll just show up and you'll make some connections with some cool people, right? And it's like a little kind of like a mini fraternity,
yeah.
Right? And so then I said, well, what about to get to the 33rd degree?
Yeah.
Right?
What's you got to do?
And he said, well, you have to do something significant, right? You have to do something really significant. You have to do something extremely significant that'll be, lasting. And I'm like, kill a president.
Oh, shit, really?
No, I said that. I was like,
what?
Like assassin.
He's invent braces.
Like assassinate a president. No, this was
yeah.
So what, assassinate a president or something like that? And he's like, well, we haven't done that. That's not something we do. Or we haven't done it. I'm like, well,
we invented bubblegum.
No, you haven't done that. You guys haven't done anything like that since what, since 1963 or something like that, Right, it's been a long time. The last time he did that was 1963 when you assassinated a sitting U.S. president, right?
Jesus.
And he's like, "Well, this is my car. Thank you for the ride."
He's like, "Gotta go." He's like, all of a sudden, I can't hear anymore.
Yeah, he got really uncomfortable, and I was like, "Yeah, you guys haven't done that since 1960,
That's
November
so
of 1960 was the last time you assassinated a sitting U.S. president."
Yeah, I feel like I didn't, but I will highly recommend reading the Stargate theory or gateway control and the holographic universe principle. Those two things are usually I can kind of understand what's going on with them, but that one is so in depth that I'm I really need to keep reading this because I want to do at least an hour and a half just video on it, because it's those types of things when researchers are explaining something, it's usually pretty it's pretty fucking dull, which is why it gets hard to pay attention to, but it's so in depth and there's so many physical aspects to it. Have you read Project Bluebeam? That one's fun.
I didn't read about it fully, but I know what Project Bluebeam is, and it's basically the fake alien invasion.
Doesn't it just seem like we're gearing up for it?
Yeah.
I forgot
what's that doctor's name? And he died. He exposed it, and he got killed.
Fuck, they always do.
I know.
They always do. They're like, hey, got something fun to say, and then they're just like, oh, I woke up dead.
But basically, Project Bluebeam is going to be, you're going to use holographic imaging.
What do you think they're going to make the aliens look like?
Regular aliens. What you see in the movies.
It probably will be something like you've seen in a movie before, right? Because I feel like that's all pre-programming.
Look at Independence Day.
Yeah.
Remember what happened in Independence Day after Independence Day was over?
I don't know. Was everybody friends again?
Well, they had a global government. It was almost like you had a global government.
Yeah. We were all buddies.
We're all one. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all buddies.
We're all one.
Yeah.
Did you see Spider-Man Far From Home when Spider-Man traveled and they had the what's it called? Jake Gyllenhaal's character. What was that guy's name?
Jake Gyllenhaal?
Jake Gyllenhaal played a villain.
Oh. I don't know because I haven't watched any of the new superhero movies because I feel like they're all propaganda.
I gotta go. Of course, it's all propaganda, but
which I made up a propaganda movie in my head.
Spider-Man, hold on.
Let me tell you about my propaganda movie.
I want to hear. I'm gonna interrupt you though. Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
Spider-Man: Far From Home.
I like that Gary's just losing his mind off camera.
That is funny. All right, Spider-Man: Far From Home. We're Googling this right now.
Breaking. It better be worth it.
No, it is worth it. It is worth it. Okay, so, hey, keep talking. I'm sorry.
All right. I'll tell you about the Pixar movie in my head because I like to make up Disney movies, and I feel like this one's going to be a really good propaganda movie. We'll get Walt Disney on the phone. So I don't know if you saw in New York, they released a PSA of what to do when there's a nuclear attack.
I saw that, yes.
So I feel like because of all the movies that we've seen growing up, that they make you it seem like getting exposed to radiation isn't that bad. It'll just give you superpowers when really it'll just like make you die. So in my head, I want to make a propaganda movie where it's like there's a nuclear attack on New York, but only like cute shit happens after. Like my dog gets like telekinesis and can like get like dog cupcakes from like the bakery. Like she can like make them come with her mind, or like it's just all fun stuff. Like there's like a nuclear warning, but it's like you went inside, so it wasn't that bad. Because that's the PSA. The PSA is just go in your apartment and shut the windows. Which I'm like, that's not how Hiroshima worked.
Yeah, no,
like, that's not. That didn't work out well for anybody at Chernobyl. Also, just I feel like that in itself. I'm like, there's just so much fear porn. I'm like, do we even have this threat, or is this just another way of you making us scared every fucking day to listen to more like rules?
Okay, Mysterio. He played Mysterio.
That was so worth it.
Totally. Well, no, he played Mysterio, and there was basically like a bunch of like aliens and like supernatural beings that were attacking like Prague in Spider-Man, but they weren't real beings. And he played this guy who looked like a hero called Mysterio, and he was like saving the day from these imaginary beings that were attacking Prague.
So it's just Project Bluebeam.
Yes,
they're just like doing it.
Yes,
yeah,
so that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah,
and they use this thing called Vision Tech, where they
it's just Google glasses.
Yeah, well, basically you had these holograms that looked like they were real, but they were not doing anything, and they were not real. And so it's kind of like a lot of that. It seems like that stuff is kind of being
it seems like
projected out to you.
Yeah, and it's mostly anytime that there's a movie that's like a big blockbuster film, and it seems like everybody just chomped at the bit for like fucking superhero movies. Like, it just seems like fucking propaganda every time. Like, I'm like, I just stopped watching them because like even what's it called, with snapping his fingers and then part of the population's gone, and now that we know,
oh, that's Bill Gates. Thanos is Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thanos is Bill Gates.
So now we also, there's so many studies out that like the next generation, like we're seeing such a like bottleneck that the next generation, there's probably only gonna be like 40% of what we see now, because everybody's waiting so long to have kids. Like we're putting plastics in foods, everybody's taking all these fucking crazy medications, like our food isn't fucking food, and just like there's literally like less people having kids, that they're like there's gonna be literally the next generation is only going to be like 40% of us on the earth. But it's like, well, that's just like that movie where it's like, if you just heard that, you'd be like, that's fucking terrifying. But you're like, it's like the Marvel movie.
Well, this is bringing us to another topic.
Okay.
So. Well. I've been watching a lot of videos and reading a lot.
Okay.
About like depopulation and whatnot, right?
And
a lot of people will say that like the world is overpopulated, and there's like this big scary narrative about how the world's overpopulated.
Yeah.
But if you looked at the population numbers, the reason the world is has so many people is because people are living longer.
Yeah.
And if you look at the majority of people that are on this earth, they are over the age of like 50 years. They're like it's
the generation before us. Yeah, it's all
and
boomers.
just boomers that haven't died.
Yeah.
And pretty much every single country in the world is having babies way below replacement. Mm-hmm. So like 30, 40, 50 years from now, you're going to see a huge decline in population.
Yeah,
and if you look at like the Georgia Guidestones, which just mysteriously got leveled, they basically say that we want to have a population of 500 million people on Earth in accordance with nature. Like
what just got leveled?
The Georgia Guidestones. It was a bunch of pillars that.
Oh, I saw that. What was that about? I didn't know like what the fuck that was.
It's a bunch of pillars. I have my phone out. You want me to read them to you?
But what do they do?
Well, it's just basically like a guide. It's basically like I don't know who wrote them, but it's these mysterious guidestones that have these edicts for how they want how humanity should be moving forward.
Oh, and they were like, get rid of those.
Well, let's
don't read it. What do they say?
Let me find it.
Who got rid of them?
Here you go. Maintain humanity under 500 million people in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely using fitness and diversity.
What?
Not weird at all. Unite humanity with a living new language.
Huh.
Yeah, nothing to worry about here.
Probably emojis.
Rule, passion, faith, tradition, and all things tempered with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Okay, that's nice. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Oh. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with societal duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature.
So these weren't too old because they used the word cancer.
I guess not. 79. They were made in 79? Okay.
1979?
There's some pretty weird, like...
Commissioned in June 79.
Okay. Commissioned in June 79, in case we didn't hear Gary.
Okay.
All right. But, like, you don't think that, like, those are some pretty anti-human edicts? Like, the first, like, 4 statements are a little weird?
They're a little weird.
Little weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That's strange. So what would you, because it's like there's all this scary stuff, all this like wild shit is happening. Obviously, like they're trying to like destabilize a lot of fucking bullshit. So you want to have kids, right?
Yeah.
What would you like tell your kid about like if they're like freaking out about everything that they see? Like what's your plan to like?
Well, it depends on what they're freaking out about.
Okay, about just like the world destabilizing. Like they're seeing the news and they're like, oh my God, everybody's fighting with each other. People want to get vaccinated. People don't want to get vaccinated. We have no money. Like, how are we ever? Okay.
I mean, we're probably going to try to limit that stuff when we're in the house, right? Or if we do, we just talk about it together. Like,
That's
well,
nice.
what does this mean? Like, what does this mean for the economy? Like, what do these charts say?
Okay.
Right.
So what's your like answer to everything going on? Like, how are you living your life based on, do any of these things like affect the way that you live your life?
Well, I'm trying to start a garden.
Okay.
I'm trying to fish more. I'm trying to work out more.
Be a bit more like self-sustaining.
Have, like, I have like a pretty good stable group of friends.
Yep.
Nurture the relationship I have with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Try to buy as much Bitcoin as I can right now.
Yeah.
Like just kind of doing what I can right now. Like pay attention to certain markets and try to accumulate certain stocks. I think we'll do really well once we start doing monetary easing again, so that I can at least have my house paid off.
Word. Yeah.
I have a house.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, you got your own shelter.
So
you got your
own. I'm trying to like, I'm really trying to go balls to the wall with being creative. Like I got this podcast. I've been going to these city council meetings. I don't know if you've seen some of my city council.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have. Which I didn't realize. Like, so anybody can just go to a city council meeting.
Yeah, you should do. I actually want to do city council comedy.
Yeah,
so I thought about
great.
this. I talked to Leonardo about it, and there's a meeting on July 28th.
Okay.
And you could sign up to speak on items. So I'm thinking of just getting like a bunch of comedians to just go and start trolling. Just go and start trolling. Just go and show up and start trolling these people.
It's funny because it's like it's fun to troll, but it's also like like the fact that like that is open to people. It's like almost like a waste. It's like throwing it away by trolling.
No, I think it's important. You got to hold up a mirror
to
what these people are. Like I'm acting like an insane liberal and repeating CNN talking points.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna say what they're saying out loud so people can just see how ridiculous they've been sounding.
Do you think though that caters to more of like the crowd that agrees with you rather than making like the liberals that sound riticulaous? Like, do you think they open their eyes to it?
No, of course they don't.
Yeah.
But the person that's like on the fence that doesn't know what's going on is gonna be like, what? I don't want that guy. I don't want that guy running things.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, because I'm like,
so it's the person like you, right? If you saw me going to a school board meeting talking about how we got to abolish the nuclear family, with a BLM mask on, saying that like parents are domestic terrorists and this and that,
I would literally just be like, this isn't helping anything.
No, but you'd be like, but you wouldn't like it would not make you want to support the group that shares those views.
It would just make me bothered. Not bothered, but it would literally because I'm not on the fence really.
I think comedy is going to save the world from tyranny.
You think so?
Yeah.
How so?
I think that's what's always been happening in the before the American Revolution. They used to they used to do the equivalent of sharing memes. They had like pictures and posters.
Yeah.
In communist countries, like the only thing they couldn't kill was jokes.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
I think that comedy. So we got 5. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I think comedy will save the world from tyranny, and like what people like myself and Alex Stein and whatnot are doing. I think it's very important to like.
I think it is very important to bring satire to the situation.
Yeah, and it makes people aware of what's going on. Like you might not really want to watch the news, or might not really want to read documents and do all that stuff because people have the attention span of goldfish.
It's crazy, yeah.
But you see someone like that, and you're like, "Yo, this is funny. Maybe I will like listen to him and I'll learn."
I literally when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, he's wasting like a moment to like be a teaching moment."
What?
Literally. Yeah, because it's like I agree with like how some sides, like both sides just go off the wall to like the most heightened, like, oh, you want a gun, that means kids are gonna die. And it's like, okay, well, there's no room for like conversation if you start the conversation like that. Or like, you're pro-abortion, you must fucking hate babies. It's like you're literally coming at like two different sides and just doing this, and there's like no room in between for conversation. So it's like for something like that, it's like I already agree that like there are some like people are being ridiculous by being like, oh, well, like the trans vaccinated thing. Like if somebody was wearing that seriously, I'd be like, well, that is absolutely fucking ridiculous. But it wouldn't make me hate that side. It would just remind me of
this is
like,
not about hating. This is about love. Like this shirt is about, you got to love people for who they are, regardless of what they put into their body or what they don't put into their body. This is about love.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. You got to love everybody. Regardless of the medical decisions that they choose to make or not choose to make.
Yeah. I just like, when I saw that you could go into there, I was like, oh my God, that's like such a good way to like have like an actual floor and be like, hey, this is where my generation is coming from, or like, this is what you're doing to my community.
But you're missing something very important.
Which is what?
And so these city officials don't give a flying fuck about you or what you have to say, and they don't want to hear your perspective because they are beholden to greater entities like what we were talking about.
That's fair.
So the only thing you can do at this point is mock them relentlessly because they mock us based on the laws and legislation and how they communicate on Twitter. One last thing before we go, though.
Yeah.
We were talking about the CRISPR and the elites creating designer babies and stuff, and I want to tie it back in, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking about how this stuff is like designed to preserve a hierarchy and make it stronger so that this power structure of global elites gets etched permanently. And so, when you're controlling when you engineer societal collapses, right, and then you start creating central bank digital currencies to kind of fix the inequities that you caused.
Crazy.
You have complete control over discourse, you have complete control over dialogue, and you have complete control over how people spend their money. You create pretty much an open-air prison for everybody, right? Now, once technology and science continues advancing at the rate that it does, and you become the only people that can have designer babies, now nobody can revolt.
Why?
Because when the peasants revolt, what are they going to be up against? They're going to be up against some 7'5", 400-pound monsters with freakishly genetic, like
just
freakishly
beautiful
genetic
people.
Just like who are like genetic,
very clean,
who are
livers,
genetic freaks, like super strong. They might even be bulletproof. Like there might be all types of stuff that these people might have. It might almost be like they're like these like.
It'll be like a different race.
Yeah, it's like you get to
or a different species. I would say.
And so it's like now. You're just stuck and you can't revolt and you can't speak out and you can't do anything because not only do they control the bank, not only do they control what medicine you have, not only do they control what you eat and how you move, but they have physical enforcers who are of a superhuman species because they spent a bunch of their money, which is your money, to design these species.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a terrifying idea for sure. I think it's a terrifying idea, but I think with all of that and like the way that it sounds like the way you're living your life, like you've got like, you're like, I'm going to love my family. I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of. Like, I'm not going to let all of this outside bullshit affect me. And I think that's like the answer to it, because I do think that a lot of this stuff that's being put out there that's like, it's so scary, like there's the Illuminati and we have no power because they have all the money and they have all the control. It's like, I feel like even putting that like a little bit out there sometimes for other people, like not for you, don't seem worried about it, but like for other people, like they might be like, well, what's the point if like all these people have all the control and
that's
shit?
Bad. No, they only have power if you comply with them, if you let them have power, right? Like, like that's why it's like, oh, they only have power if you stay home during COVID. They only have power if you get the shot. They only have power if you choose to turn in your firearms. You know what I mean? They only have power if you use their currency. Like,
yeah, I think it's very important for people to like look inward and then like design their own like what's important to you and it gets down to like the basics of like love fucking people, like have a family, have a community, like take care of your health, like get back to the basics and then like let go of like, it's like, oh yes, they might have all the money or whatever, like, oh, Jeff Bezos has the yachts, who gives a fuck, like at the end of the day, I
don't care about taxing I don't care about that. As long as you're not fucking with me trying to like level up for my stuff, I don't care.
Exactly.
Anyway, Gina, how do we get a hold of you? We're running late.
at Eggs and Hot Sauce. Eggs, the letter N, Hot Sauce. GinaHyenaComedy.com, and on Twitter at Eggs and Hot Sauce as
It's
well.
kind of crazy. We didn't even talk about comedy. We talked about a whole bunch of deep shit.
Yeah, it was
wild.
fun. It was fun.
All because you didn't want to sit next to me.
Yeah.
Wild. All right, Gina Hyena, thank you so much. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boom. Yeah.